My memories of Johnny always revolve around my dad wearing his green checked robe. He would always say, I have to go to bed, I have to go to bed. We'll watch his monologue and then we're going to bed. We watch the monologue and he'd say, we'll just see the first guy. He might do Karnak tonight, he might do Karnak. Let's see if he does Karnak, or let's see if he does Floyd Turbo. And then we'd watch that and go like, okay, first guest, we'll just see the first guest. And my dad was always up till the end of the show. My first experience of Johnny Carson was he made my dad laugh. That was at an age when you really want to make your father laugh, and here's this guy who routinely makes my father laugh. On TV, what I always saw with Johnny Carson was someone who tried to make the guest look good and tried to the best of his ability, help people.
You know, that last number is very catchy. Really? No, it is. It's got a dump.
There's an old saying that what's in you comes out on television.
You know, I said it before when you were first on this show, and I mean it. I said, you're going to be something to contend with. You're going to be a big star in this business because you are unique and you're different.
And that was Johnny Carson. He listened and he was curious, and that made him a good interviewer.
His education enabled him to speak with all those people and be comfortable. He was comfortable talking to those people because I think he had a respect for his own intelligence. So he had no insecurity about talking to whoever. It didn't matter.
Just to make him laugh made you feel good because, one, you'd accomplished it, but also he just laughed so outrageously, he just lost control of himself. To see Johnny bent over was just something special.
He just loved jokes. He didn't try and second guess. Even if he thought something was bombing, but he thought it was funny, he would do it.
He was a student of comedy and a master of it, but he was the total package.
It's like the famous show with the guy threw the axe, remember?
You know, the famous Ed Ames tomahawk thing is one of the great lines of all time in television.
That way you break the microphone. You know, you keep your arm extended and put only one revolution on the... once around on the way. But that's indefinite.
All right. Right.
The axe was in the man's crotch, basically.
Ed Ames walks toward, he was so embarrassed, he walks toward the tomahawk to get it.
Johnny takes his hand, holds him back, because Johnny knew he had 2 or 3 lines that were dynamite, and he didn't want it spoiled.
He always had that timing and the playfulness and the sense of delight of the unknown, of putting one past people.
He knew how long to take. He doesn't time it. He didn't tap his foot and set up a rhythm for himself. It's just saying the line when it should be said and the way it should be said.
I didn't even know you were Jewish.
I benefited so much from Johnny Carson existing because I unconsciously, for lack of a better word, I unconsciously, subconsciously, consciously steal from him left and right all the time. People talk a lot about Johnny Carson, and he's become such a icon, and he's so revered that sometimes everyone's talking about how amazing he was, but they're not telling you why. And if you really look at the nuts and bolts of it, he was the complete package. He's physically he's a great physical comedian with a lot of grace. Great at playing comedic moments the way any great improviser, Will Ferrell or Steve Carell would. He could play those moments perfectly with the Jack Benny takes. Great at coming up with one-liners off the cuff, a great ad-libber. But he was also an intellect.
I was born in the Midwest. I was born in Iowa, raised in Nebraska, and... Are you from Nebraska? Where from?
Valentine.
I know Valentine, Nebraska. What?
Small.
It is. Well, most towns in Nebraska are small. How small is it?
He never forgot his good friends from his youth ever, or his Nebraska ties.
I know that he was one of the most generous men I ever met, but all in kind of secret.
We never heard about it till we read it in the paper. Picked up the paper and said, Johnny Carson. He never told us. He just did it.
And that exemplifies Johnny Carson, the man. He didn't show off. He was a showman, but he didn't show off. He just got the job done, and you know, here it is. And the same way about his generosity. He didn't want a lot of people to know about that.
It worked that way because he wanted it to. And that's the same thing, I think, with his relationship with the university, is in that he never forgot where he got his beginnings.
I mean, that's part of his heritage. I'm sure that's something that he wanted to see carried on. Nebraska, the arts, the culture, the whole thing.
I think it's wonderful. And it'll do a lot of good, and all of you are going to benefit by it. All of us are going to benefit by it.
Well, let me try to explain it. If I could magically, somehow, that tape you just saw, make it run backwards, I'd like to do the whole thing all over again. I bid you a very heartfelt good night.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film. My name is Paul Steger. I'm the director of the Carson School, and I'd like to welcome you to the Johnny Carson Lecture Series. The series was created to celebrate the contributions of entertainment icon and UNL alum Johnny Carson.
When you think of great baseball players, a lot of names come to mind. Bob Uecker is not one of them. Is the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers. He used to play Major League Baseball rather badly.
Bob Uecker does have some outstanding credentials in professional ball. He played 14 years playing for such teams as Milwaukee, St. Louis, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. He does not happen to be in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. He is not allowed to visit Cooperstown, as a matter of fact, but he's given a lot to the sport. Something will occur to me in a moment. He was a catcher. I don't know if he played for just one team.
A lot of teams.
I think a lot of teams, for reasons.
He moved around a lot.
He moved around quite a bit, and he is not one of baseball's immortals, but he did play in the major leagues, which in itself is something. And after hanging up his baseball glove, which was mostly unused, my first guess, by his own admission, was not the most successful baseball player who ever lived. But he's had big success in his television series, Mr. Belvedere, which is on Fridays at 8:30. He's the announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he does many, many beer commercials. Would you welcome Mr. Baseball, 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 Bob Uecker.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Wow. Man.
Bob, thanks so much for joining us today. It's really a great pleasure to have you here.
That's unbelievable. That's really nice.
Well, we try.
Huh?
Do our best.
Wow.
You deserve it. You know, during those introductions, Johnny didn't seem to have any end to praising baseball. How and when did you first meet Johnny?
The first show I did with Johnny was in 1969. Actually, before they moved to L.A., it was in New York. And I met Johnny. I actually got on the Tonight Show through a friend of mine at that time, by the name of Al Hurt, one of the world's great trumpeters, jazz trumpeter out of New Orleans. And yeah, he was a beauty. He was a good one. And Al and I became friends, and he opened a small nightclub in Atlanta, and he asked me if I would come up on stage during his little break that he took. And I had been doing speaking stuff and dinners and all that kind of stuff. I had never done any big-time television. I was doing baseball TV for the Braves at that time in Atlanta. So I go on stage with Al and do my thing for about 15, 20 minutes. And after the show was over that night, Al and I spent the rest of the evening in a freezer backstage. It's a true story, a walk-in freezer. And Al, every once in a while, used to take a hit on a bonger or something. And, so we talked in that freezer until it got cold enough where maybe we ought to get out of here. And so he told me I was wasting my time doing what I was doing these dinners, these small dinners and stuff. He said, I'm going to get you on the Tonight Show. I said, oh yeah, sure. Well, about 3 weeks later, I get a call from New York, and I went up there and I met one of Johnny's coordinators, a guy by the name of Craig Tennis. And he told me they'd be in touch with me, and he called me back the next week and told me to come back to New York, and so I did my first show. And we were talking earlier, I was telling Mark Antanasio earlier that at the end of that first show, I heard Johnny, we shook hands to say goodnight, and I heard Johnny ask Ed, he said, did that guy really play baseball? Because I was telling these fantastic stories about how great I was, and I really sucked, And, but I always tried to I made it sound good, like I was really good. And Johnny at that time wasn't, he wasn't really into baseball. I mean, as we got more and more involved with each other in the shows, he actually started to, pick up a little bit on some of the baseball teams and the wins and losses and stuff like that. And it went on from there. And, I think after the first show, I came back 3 times in the next month and did 3 more shows with him, And the one thing that Johnny was so good at, I mean, I'm standing backstage watching that stuff. I mean, it brought back so many great memories of some of the shows I was on with some of those guests that you saw. He had that knack of, the facial stuff that he did was so unbelievably funny. We were talking earlier tonight, or today I should say, about some of the bad material that Johnny would do purposely. He would have these writers, these guys would write such crappy stuff for him so he could go on stage. He'd go out there and he'd tell these stories that, he's looking for a laugh, not really, but people never laughed. And that gave him the opportunity to do those great looks that he had. I mean, it was truly unbelievable the way he could get an audience and look his eyes up and down, back and forth. And for about maybe the first 20 times I was on the show, 25 times, he had a script, questions that, you want to talk about, things you've done, little lead-in stuff. And one night, this is after they had been in California for a couple years, he asked me one night, he said, do you need this stuff? I said, no, I thought it was for you. So from then on, we pretty much went, let her go. And you see how easy he is, to work with. He's unbelievably easy to work with. Great ad-libber. And it made it easy for me, too, because I do the same stuff. That's the way I operate, too. And he always gave me that opportunity to let her run, let it go. And I was talking with Paul earlier today of all the shows and things that I've done. I mean, I had more fun on The Tonight Show with Johnny, Doc, and Ed McMahon. As a matter of fact, a lot of the band members would come over when we were out there playing. I would be in Anaheim doing a game for the Brewers against the Angels, and I could actually get over to the Tonight Show, do the show, because it taped earlier than we started the game, and get back over to Anaheim in time to do the game. And sometimes the band members, I'd get those guys with me and jump in a car, and we'd come back and they'd sit up in the booth. And it went that way for all that time. I mean, it was one of the great experiences. I wish everybody had a chance to be around Johnny, to meet him and hang with him. You know, I mean, he was, to stand backstage while he's getting on one of those, you know, ugly outfits that he used to wear, the car salesman guy. And, you know, the Incredible Hulk, didn't he? Yeah, he did the Incredible Hulk, the big green guy. And I mean, to watch him put that stuff on, that was funny enough. You didn't have to watch him go on stage, you know, you just be backstage with him.
Well, we have a clip from one of your earliest appearances on The Tonight Show.
That's pretty good.
Can we run that clip?
Somebody gave me some pictures tonight. Are these some of the highlights
Yes.
of your career?
Right.
14 years. How many teams did you play with?
I was with 4. Everybody wanted to take a chance on winning the pennant, of course, so...
You kept going from
Right.
team to team?
Right.
Okay. Let's, I haven't seen these myself. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll hold them up, and maybe you can tell us what they're... they see the monitor up there. Obviously, it's a locker room celebration.
No, this is actually a picture of me getting ready for a game.
You don't believe in waiting too long, huh?
No, I hadn't played in a couple days, and to get me ready, why they...
Kind of prime you a little bit, huh?
Prime me up, right.
All right. Was that actually a pennant winning team at all?
No, not after that picture was taken.
No. You were catcher.
Yes, I was. Chaser.
Chaser. Now, that is you down here?
Yes, that's me. That's my hidden ball trick.
What happened in that particular?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, he had his bell rung.
Yes. It's chimed for quite a while, doesn't it? Yes.
So what was it like being a guest on The Tonight Show at that point in your career? And what was it like?
Well, first of all, the first time I went on the show, I was scared to death. Not nervous about being on the show itself, nervous about being good. I mean, I had done, other stuff before, big dinners at that time. I did a dinner in front of 1,000 people. I thought that was pretty good. But when you're standing backstage at The Tonight Show, and he's out there doing that Mr. Baseball stuff, and the guy's ready to open the curtain, and you go, you're out. And I knew I wasn't going back to being a catcher after doing that. But he, as I said before, he made you feel comfortable all the time, no matter what. I was talking earlier today about, there's a lot of times on The Tonight Show which we as an audience don't get to see when certain guests, they run out of time and you don't get out. You don't do the show. Now you either stay overnight, which I would have had to do because I came from out of town all the time, or if somebody is an LA resident or close out there, you come back the next night. Never, ever did Johnny ever knock me off of one of the shows for somebody else. Somebody that was a movie personality, whatever they were. Anytime that ever happened, it happened once where a fairly decent star, Billy Barty, but he was supposed to be out and I was still backstage. And Johnny told Freddie DeCordova at that time that he wanted me out there instead. And never, ever, not one time did he ever even come close to making me come back tomorrow or wait till next week. I mean, I had such a great rapport with Johnny. I really did. We had not only out on stage, I mean, it was backstage too, you know, where we had such a great time, and he was an easy guy, really an easy guy to get along with. I mean, he could get upset. I mean, he got upset. I remember one particular night, I was on with a woman. She was the female Yule Gibbons. Do you remember Yule Gibbons? Yeah. Yule Gibbons was a guy that ate trees and dirt and, you know, everything else. It wasn't nailed down or painted, he ate it.
Granola. He was the beginning of the granola.
Yeah, and this woman, she smoked a corncob pipe, and she had all these things she had picked up outside her motel where she was staying overnight. All these pieces of grass and leaves and bark and everything else. And on the show that night, George Papard was a guest. So he was out first. She came out next. And she started telling Johnny how much better looking George Papard was than Johnny. And I'm thinking, man, this ain't going too good, you know. And she's got her plate of leaves and everything else that she wanted Johnny to eat, which he didn't do. But she kept it up, you know. She kept kind of jabbing at him, and she was an older woman. After they went to another commercial break, I came out, did my thing, went to another commercial break, and he told me you'll never see her on the show again. You know, I mean, he got that upset at her that. She tried to, I don't know what she was trying to do. It wasn't very funny what she was trying to do, but he got upset at her. But I mean, that happened infrequently with Johnny. I mean, he pretty much got along with everybody. I mean, he had such great rapport with you know, big star. He didn't care. Johnny never cared about stuff like that. He was Johnny. I mean, he was Johnny. That was it. When he said, here's Johnny, that was it. That's what you got.
We have another clip from 1973. I'm surprising you with all of these.
Yeah,
but,
I didn't see this stuff.
If you would, can you run that clip?
Baseball never seems to change like basketball so much. They change the rules all the time. Have there been significant changes in the game?
Well, baseball is making changes every year. They have in the American League now, they have the designated hitter.
I don't understand that.
They use a hitter instead of the pitcher hitting, John. The pitcher never hits. They use a man to hit for the pitcher all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think this would have hurt me, too, had I been playing now, because I guess it's kind of embarrassing to be in the on-deck circle and have the manager send the pitcher up to hit for you.
Why?
But they've made a lot of changes. You can't leave your gloves on the field anymore. Well, I remember the guys that invented the bat, I guess, 1888. Everybody laughed at them, too, because they changed. They used a baseball bat. And after about a year, there was only about 10 or 12 guys that were still using their fists.
So that speeded up the game a lot.
Well, it did, and I think going from the leather supporter to a cloth-type supporter, I think...
That speeded up the game, did it?
No, but it changed a lot of things. I think years ago, the old-timers wearing that leather supporter, when you sweat, it would expand. And then when you sit on the bench, it would contract again. And I think this is why, like after the game, when they used to interview these old-timers, they had such high-pitched voices.
That's what probably why a lot of them retired early, also. That
could be, So, you appeared on The Tonight Show something like 100 times. You did films, Major League, Major League 2, Mr. Belvedere, a few syndicated television shows.
Yeah.
Do you attribute any of that success to your appearances of Johnny having you on the show?
Well, I mean, The Tonight Show is the #1 show. I mean, when Johnny was there, The Tonight Show was the show. I mean, any comedian, any singer, actor, actress, when you made The Tonight Show, that was a big deal. I never did it as a show business guy. I did it for laughs. You know, I was involved in baseball. All the time I was doing all those other things, I was doing play-by-play baseball for the Brewers. This is going to be my 44th year coming up now next year. Thank you. Yeah, it'll be my 57th year in baseball overall next year. So, but when I went to do the Tonight Show, I would fly out there and fly back, take a red eye back to Milwaukee in time to do a game the next day, you know? So when I came out there to do the things I did with Johnny, I wasn't promoting anything until we got to the Mr. Belvedere thing. I don't know if you had any clip on that, but I actually, the first time I ever sang on the Mr. Belvedere show, the premise of the show, I was a sports writer, and I was going to change my MO, and I was going to become a lounge act. So I go on the show to promote, I go on the Tonight Show to promote our show, Mr. Belvedere, and so Johnny asked me if I could sing, give us, you know, a little sample of what you're going to sing on the show. So I said, yeah. So the song I'm singing is My Kind of Town Chicago Is, but it's Pittsburgh because that's where our family and the show was from. So I sang really flat. I mean really bad. I mean I really stunk. I'm doing it on purpose. So he stopped me. He actually stopped me from singing because it was that bad. So he said, now when is this show going to air? I said, Thursday. So he made believe he had a paper. He said, Thursday, bowling, he wrote. So then I blamed it on Doc. I blamed it on Doc that we didn't have a chance to rehearse, and he was playing off key. But that was the only time that I went on there and I did anything to promote something that I was going to do, you know, with that Belvedere stuff. Other than that, I mean, it was just let her rip. You know, whatever you wanted to say, go ahead. And it wasn't as spicy as TV is today. You know, you had to kind of be careful what you said. Even when I talked about that supporter thing, geez, am I going to get censored for doing this? You know, talking about a supporter, which was, I told a story on there one night about my first game in the major leagues, and our manager coming up and asking me if I was nervous or uptight about the game. You know, it was my first game in the big leagues. And he said, I know your family is here and your relatives. He said, I don't want you to be uptight. You know, just go out and do your job. I said, hey, I've been in the minor leagues 6 years waiting to get here. I'm ready to go. And he said, oh, you're in there today. I'm going to put you in the lineup. And he said, by the way, the rest of us wear that supporter on the inside. So that was one of the stories that I told with Johnny, you know, and I think all the stuff that I did, the stuff that I always tried to do was not laugh, you know, when I talked to him, not to laugh myself. And I knew I could break him up. I knew I could get him because he had, you know, he loved to laugh. And he told me one night on the show, he said, one of these days, one of these nights, I'm going to make you laugh. You know, not on the show you won't, you know, backstage, anytime, but not out here. And I think when he looked at you, you know, he had that, you know, that look he had on his face all the time. But when I had the chance to sit with him next to him and look face to face, and I looked at him like, you know, what are you laughing at? You know, I'm trying to tell you a story about my career, and you're laughing, you know. So that made him laugh more, you know, when you look like, what are you laughing at? I'm trying to talk to you, and you're laughing. I mean, I played in the big leagues, you know. So those were the things that anytime I went, I'd sit backstage with him before the show started and tell jokes. You know, we'd tell stories to each other. I had a great relationship with him. I really did. I enjoyed every time I went out there. I don't care if I had to take a red eye back and work as soon as I got back to wherever we were on the road to do a game. I didn't care. I had a chance to be with him and have some laughs, and it was fun. Doc Severinsen, who I understand is coming to Lincoln to conduct the symphony. I still see Doc once in a while. Yeah, he's a great guy too. Mm-hmm.
You guys, you and Johnny actually started looking a little bit alike there. You both had your red jackets on. And,
yeah, we did. Things happened. Yeah.
Well, we have another clip. from an appearance in 1990. Can we run that clip?
When I broadcast, now, there are a lot of times I work naked in the booth.
I didn't know that. And you don't want people wandering.
I don't mind if a guy comes in.
Sure.
But I don't want a lady coming in there. And it's a little tough. Now you got to watch out when I work like that. July and August is really hot.
Yeah, of course.
So
you want to be comfortable.
I want to be comfortable.
Right.
But you got to watch out during the national anthem and maybe the seventh inning stretch.
That's right. Yeah. Otherwise, you're home free.
Otherwise, you're home free. Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, how about the World Series? Were you disappointed? Were you surprised?
No, I picked the Reds, Johnny. I actually picked the Reds. I picked the A's last year.
Oh, come on. You picked them in the 4 game?
I picked the Reds in 4 after the series was over. And I think a lot of this comes from you. You know, you stuck that handle on me, Mr. Baseball.
Right.
So rather than embarrass myself by making a pre-series pick, I'll wait till after.
Good.
Well,
Good
sure, you know, it's named kind of holes, you know.
That's right.
Sure.
What did the winning players get this year? Do you have any idea?
A winning share, I think a winning share in the series now is around $85,000.
For just
85 grand.
85 grand. Now, when you were playing, were you in a World Series? I didn't mean that to embarrass you. You well could have been.
1964.
1964. What was the share among the players?
Well, I didn't get one. I heard they got 8,600 apiece.
I thought all the players shared in the...
Well, you're supposed to, but...
You have a wonderful sense of timing and keeping a straight face through all those funny lines. Johnny had a way of pitching the ball to you and letting you have the punchline and getting the big laugh, and then he would do his little reaction to it and get just as big a laugh.
Oh, yeah, that's what made Johnny so good. That's what made him what he was. He never stepped on you, never stepped on you. You know what? You know the thing about Johnny that was so great? Johnny wanted you to be good. He wanted you to be good on the show. And as I said earlier, once we started doing the ad-libbing stuff where it's like we're sitting here right now shooting the breeze. That's what it was with him. And you know, when you hang around a guy like Johnny for as many times as I did, you know, you kind of get to know each other and a sense of timing and everything else. And you know, one word leads to another thought. It's funny sometimes how weird things come to your mind. I mean, my mind. I know I have a weak mind, which allows a lot of room for idle thought, you know. But I do the same thing on our broadcasts, as Mark will tell you, depending on what the game is. I mean, if we have a good game going, I don't mess around. You know, I do a straight broadcast and get excited, and do the whole thing that you're supposed to do. But when you know it's 8-0 in the first inning and we haven't hit yet, you know, you gotta come up with something to keep people listening. You know, so that was the one thing about him that made you easy. You know, he made you comfortable, really easy. Yeah.
He was a generous comedian.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he wanted you to be good. He really did. The better you were, and the more he laughed. You know, I mean, he genuinely laughed really hard. I remember one show that I did. We were talking about injuries. He asked me about being injured, and I told him about this doctor we had that was kind of cheap, you know, with the team. You know, he didn't have to pay him a lot of money, and I had a hernia, and he fixed it. And I think he tied me a little tight because, like, when I go to shake hands with people, my leg flies out. I said, you know, I'd tell him, don't, you know, people that stand close to me, I don't like to shake hands with people, you know, because of that, you know. I told him one time, I know we were talking about a knee injury that I had, and I told him there's no scar. You know, I said the guys today are unbelievable the way they do the knee surgeries, you know, years ago. And he's telling, you know, he's doing his thing. Yeah, I know how that was. And he said, well, what do they do now that you don't have a scar? I said, they go through your rear end. You know, there's a huge scar back there, but here there's nothing. You know, it's perfect, easy.
I'm sure that folks would love to hear about your early times in baseball. You signed a pro contract in '56.
Yes.
How old were you then?
I had just come out of the service. I joined the service on our side. I signed for a very modest $3,000 bonus at that time, which kind of aggravated my dad because he didn't have that kind of money to put out. I actually started my career as a pitcher, and I remember my first game that I was pitching that my parents came to. It was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and you know, they're excited to see me, and I, you know, having a little bit of a rough time, and the manager came out. He was going to take me out of the game, and I said, let me pitch to this guy one more time, because I had struck him out the last time I faced him. And he said, I know, but it's the same inning.
You tend to make light of your career in baseball. You did have a fun career, though. An interesting point, you were traded from Milwaukee to the Cardinals,
St. Louis,
for two catchers.
Yeah.
One catcher for two.
Yeah, Gary Kolb and Jim Coker was the other guy. And I remember going into the Cardinal clubhouse. I went from Bradenton to St. Petersburg, is where the Cardinals were training. And Red Chandies was one of the Cardinal coaches at that time. And he told me that Branch Rickey, who was the GM of the Cardinals, wanted to see me. So I go into his office with Red, and I'm telling you a true story. Branch Rickey, he didn't even say hello to me. He said, I wouldn't give one Gary Kolb for 100 Bob Ueckers. That's the first thing he said to me. So, you know, I called him. I said, well, you're a decrepit old man. And I left. I walked out, you know, and Red said, what'd you say that for? He said, well, what did he say that for? You know, but he didn't want to make the trade. Tim McCarver was the other catcher, the regular catcher, and Branch Rickey really didn't want to make the trade. I think they got me because I could throw. I couldn't hit that much. You know, I wasn't all that great hitting. I always thought a swing and a miss or a foul tip was really good, you know. But yeah, I wound up, that was in 1964.
What a year to come to the Cardinals.
Yeah, we won the World's Championship that year, and I contributed to that. You know, finally something positive. I remember Bing Devine, who was the Cards general manager at that time, told me for the series that he wanted me to do a favor for the Cardinals where he thought I could really help the club, and hey, you know, I'm in. What do you want? And he said, we'd like to inject you with hepatitis so we can bring up another player. I said, you know, will I be able to sit on the bench? He said, oh yeah, you know, we'll have one of those plastic things you can sit in there. And, I mean, the yellow color of my skin on that white Cardinal uniform, I mean, that looked really good, you know. But yeah, that was, we got our World Series rings. I think that's the one thing that every player, I don't care what the sport is, you know, a championship ring, a World's Championship ring. And I remember the following season, they handed out the rings at home plate. Everybody goes up there and you get your ring, and they threw mine in the left field. And I found it like in the 5th inning. I kept going out there for 2 innings, and it was different, a little different than the other guys' rings, which I thought made me special. They had a little compartment on the top. You could open it up and... Picture of Roy Rogers in there. It was pretty cool.
You got to play with Bob Gibson, an Omaha, Nebraska native.
One of my favorite all-time people.
Yes. Yep. Tell me a Gibson story.
I'll tell you one story with Gibby. Tim McCarver, as I said, was the other catcher. Gibby was mean. He was one of the meanest guys I've ever been around in my life. Only on days when he pitched, when he worked. He didn't want to talk to anybody, and especially opposing players. I mean, he was unbelievably tough. And I remember one particular game where Tim McCarver walked out to talk to Gibby and to give him a little bit of a breather. And when he got to the mound, Bob Gibson said, "What do you want out here? What are you doing out here? What do you want? The only thing you know about pitching is you can't hit it. Get out of here." Okay, you know, okay. So I talked about an incident that I had with Gibby where I went out there to talk to him, and he said, you know, he growled at me. He's always grumpy. "What do you want?" I said, "Nothing. I'm going out to center field to see Kurt Flood."
He didn't like the other teams either, the opposing teams.
I'm telling you, on days he pitched, he didn't like anybody. His family, he didn't like anybody. I mean, he was an unbelievable competitor. He's a great athlete. Gibby was a great athlete. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Willie Mays. You said Willie Mays.
Oh yeah, Willie Mays. Well, because Gibby threw so hard, and back in those days, things have changed a little bit. And I don't ever like to see anybody get hurt bad, you know, maimed by a pitch. You know, we talk about knockdown pitches and things like that. Today, and you and I were talking about this earlier. Today, if players did back then what they do today when they hit a home run, stand there and watch it, I guarantee you the next guy up is going. And that guy who hit the home run the next time, he's going. And I mean, they did it. That was just the way baseball was back in the, you know, the 40s, 50s, 60s. And Don Drysdale, who was one of the great Dodger pitchers of all time, Don Drysdale had a theory. If you hit one of their guys, 2 of your guys were going. I mean, it was 2 of you for one of them. And that's the way it was. And Willie Mays always wanted to talk to Gibby on days that Gibby pitched. He'd always want to talk to Gibby. "Hey, Hoot, how you doing?" He had a big high voice. Gibby wouldn't even talk to him. He wouldn't turn around, wouldn't look at him, nothing, because there was going to be a time in that game when Willie was going down. I mean, he was, you know, brushing back, high and inside. That was just part of baseball at that time, you know. And again, I don't want to see anybody get hurt really badly, but there are those times when, you know, you're getting your brains beat out there, and you got to do something. Part of home plate belongs to you as a pitcher, you know, whether it be the middle to the outside. And when you have guys reaching out and hitting balls that are on the outside part of the plate and hitting for home runs to right field, somebody's got to be moved. You know, you have to move guys off the plate, and the way to do that is to throw up and in. And that's the thing that's changed a little bit in baseball today, where it sometimes got out of hand. I mean, there was a lot of the scuffles and fights that happened in baseball back in those years happened because somebody got hit, and it was on purpose. They still do it today. I mean, though they deny it, managers deny it and pitchers deny it, they do it. I mean, it's human nature. When you're getting beat up as badly as some pitchers get beat up sometimes, and the team is getting really knocked around, human nature says you got to do something about it, you know. And for the most part, it's brushing somebody back or hitting somebody. Then the other team retaliates. And it's the umpire coming out and saying the next guy who throws at somebody or hits somebody is out of the game. There are those times when you see guys come in and hit somebody because they know they're going out anyway. And that's the way they do it. Football, you got these defensive backs. I mean, they're trying to tear you apart, these wide receivers that run out there and catch these passes in areas that are covered. And if they keep doing it, I mean, that guy's going to try and wipe you out. I mean, he really wants to hurt you, to get you out of there. That's just the nature of sports. I mean, you're being paid these tremendous amounts of money today, as Mr. Antanasio will tell you. There's a lot of money involved in sports today, and you have to. It happens. That's just the way it is. That's human nature, as I said before.
So you go from catching Bob Gibson to catching Phil Niekro.
Yeah, that was...
who threw the knuckleball. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Phil Niekro was a knuckleball pitcher. And, it's really funny. People make such a big deal out of catching the knuckleball. I found the easiest way for myself to catch it was to wait until it stopped rolling and then just pick it up. That was a feat in itself. He went on to become a Hall of Famer, and that was my job. Joe Torre didn't want to do it and couldn't do it. He was the other catcher with the Braves at that time. And I had caught Phil Niekro in the minor leagues when I first came up with the Braves in Milwaukee. That was a long time ago. Phil was a minor league pitcher. I was in the minor leagues, so we knew each other. And not that I was a great knuckleball catcher, but I at least knew him. And when I got traded back to Atlanta from Philadelphia, my second time around with the Braves, that was why I was brought back, to specifically catch Phil Niekro and save Joe Torre the embarrassment of doing it, But,
how did you get into commercials? I mean, you're perfect. Everything you did was wonderful.
This is a story that happened in Milwaukee with our owner at that time, who's now the commissioner of baseball, Bud Selig. The Miller Brewing Company had put together that series of commercials with ex-athletes. You had to be an ex-athlete. You couldn't use an active guy because of alcohol. So the brewery had come to me a couple of times. I'd already, I've been doing the Tonight Shows and stuff, making other appearances, and they wanted to use me in one of the commercials. And our beer sponsor at that time was Pabst Blue Ribbon. So I said no to the brewery 3 times. And then the 4th time they asked me, I thought, I don't think they're going to do this many more times, ask me. So I went to Bud, and I talked to Bud, and I said, if I can't do these spots, I'm ready to leave. I'll go someplace else, but I think I'm making a mistake if I don't do this. So he told me to go, and he went with me. We talked to the people at Pabst, and they said that they didn't use, any kind of celebrities in there, which I wasn't at that time anyway, but they didn't use them in their commercials. He said they'd be willing to have me call on beer distributorships as we moved around the country. Oh, wow. Man, what a break. So Bud told me to go ahead and do it. And he said, we'll see what happens with Miller and Pabst. And I go do the first spot I did was where I couldn't get in the bar. I got locked out and couldn't get in. And Miller eventually became our #1 sponsor. We have Miller Park in Milwaukee. It's not Pabst Blue Ribbon Stadium. It's Miller Park, So I went on and did those, and I did a lot of stuff with Johnny Bench. We did paint commercials, but the Miller spots those were really fun. It was like being on a team again.
Speaking of those.
Yeah, speaking of those, we have a small collection of those. And just if you're not familiar with them, in one of the more popular ones, Bob, you're walking, it shows you walking to your seat, and an usher, and you're very excited about watching the game from about the 5th row out. And the usher comes up and says, look, I'm sorry, sir, you must be in the wrong seat. And Bob looks to the camera and says, oh, I must be in the front row. Well, and then they cut away to information on beer, and then the next time we see him, he's sitting up in the furthest seats away from the field, and basically way the heck up in the nosebleed seats. So from then on, basically any arena you go to, any ballpark you go to, they basically refer to those as the euchre seats.
Yep.
So, and even now, at Miller Park, it's $1, right, to get into the euchre seats.
Yeah, they have seats for $1. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have some people up there in our euchre seats. And for being well, and for being a special guest up there in the euchre seats, we wanted to provide you with the ultimate collection of Carson DVDs. So you all will receive a DVD. I hope you enjoy that. There were a few, though, that were more serious and literally tried to focus a little bit more on making a difference in the world.
Yep.
You and Johnny were very similar in that way, and supporting causes that helped individuals that might not be, or that may be less fortunate than us. We put together a few of those, so can we please run those commercial clips?
We're here at the 18th hole of this light beer open, and we've seen some real unusual shots today.
You said it.
Hey, Bob, I think you got a birdie!
Elsie, how am I supposed to hit it through this tree?
No problem, Bird.
How's Uecker going to get out of this one?
That calls for another light beer from Miller.
Make it 2, 3, 4.
It's a good thing light's less filling.
Back to you, Ricky!
John, the last player's approaching the tee.
And when it goes to 100, you sell. I won't be long, girls. Hold my calls, will you?
It hit the weather vane! It's in the drain! Here it comes out! It's going on the green! It's going in the hole!
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
This open ought to be closed.
Well, did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine that those commercials would be so popular?
You know, it was like being on a team again with all those guys. The shoots were unbelievably funny and long, and you know, as I said, being back with a team and with these guys who are all ex-players, some Hall of Famers, a lot of Hall of Famers. It was a week of insanity is what it was. That's how long it used to take to shoot a reunion spot. They did one reunion spot every year, and then you would do your individual stuff. But a reunion spot, that diving scene, when we did it, I don't know if a lot of you ever saw the movie, the Poseidon Adventure. That tank where we shot the underwater stuff was where they had all of the superstructure work for that ship. And I saw you had a clip of Shelley Winters on here earlier with Johnny, her swimming through all that stuff. That's where we did that spot where I was underwater. And I had 3 divers down there with me. And each time when we first started, when I first came to the shoot, I get out of a limo, you know, the driver doesn't even open the door for me, and, you know, it's the same old stuff, you know, treated like crap. I walk up to, you know, where I'm supposed to go in, nobody pays any attention to me. I go over to where we're going to do the shoot, and the divers are betting that I'm going to die. You know, this stuff is all, Miller would use these little film vignettes at a function where you wouldn't have to talk as long. So when I get down there in the tank, each time I'd go to swing the golf club, and I had weights on, each time I'd start to go up in the air, you know, I mean, I'd start to go up in the water. So they put stuff down on the bottom where I could stick my feet in and stay down that way. Then the divers would swim out of the shot. I would suck air for a little while, you know, get enough air, and then do the shot again. And we were down there, I don't know, it was down there maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that, to do that thing. But any of the stuff that we did like that, I always wanted to do it myself. I didn't, you know, to use a double. I didn't want to do that. I could do it. I know I could do it. I enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. And any of the things that I did, I always did them myself. You know, I didn't want anybody doing something. I didn't think they could do it the way I would do it. That's basically what it boiled down to.
Well, we have, there's another series of 2 commercials that I want to run kind of together. And this is one that's a little bit more serious, and then that one that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
So can we run those 2 commercials together, one right after the other? Thanks.
The light beer all-stars have all had their ambitions.
Like going to the Super Bowl.
Or the World Series.
But Jay and Joey have an even greater ambition. They'd like to do the things other kids can do, but they have cerebral palsy.
So we're helping them and others like them. You can too.
Every time you buy light beer from Miller in February, Light will make a donation to United Cerebral Palsy.
To give them a chance, the rest of us must take the first step.
Look for this display wherever light beer is sold and help us fight cerebral palsy.
It's one of my bigger days. Let me buy a beer. Sure. These fans, I love them. When I came in, they didn't recognize me at first, but then when I told them who I was, next thing you know, they're buying me my favorite beer, light beer from Miller. They know us ex-big leaguers drink light because it's got 1/3 less calories than their regular beer. It's less filling, and it tastes great. Thanks. Hey, it's a pleasure to buy a beer for a great pitcher like Whitey Ford.
Hey,
So I lied.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Hey, Whitey, I thought you were a lefty. Oh, that's right.
Thanks.
That ad campaign, it's the longest running ad campaign in advertising history. That ran for 17 years, those Miller Lite spots. They were a lot of fun. We had a good time.
You also became involved with the World Wrestling Federation. Tell me about that.
I did WrestleMania 3 and 4, and Vince McMahon, who's a good friend and runs the WWE or WWF, whatever it is, and Dick Ebersol, who was the head of NBC Sports for such a very long time, worked with Vince on the wrestling part of it. And in the first match that we had, that was at the Pontiac Silverdome. It's the largest indoor crowd ever for a sporting event. 93,000 people they had for that thing. And I got a chance to be choked by Andre the Giant, which was kind of fun. I had Mary Hart. She was my ring girl in WrestleMania 3, and then WrestleMania 4 was Vanna White. But in WrestleMania 3, Jesse Ventura, who became governor of Minnesota, I don't know how. Man, what a shock that was. Jeez. Me and him are having a fake argument, of course, as to who's going to take out Vanna White. I think it was the second one. Anyway, I'm to be downstairs, and Andre the Giant is down there raving about Hulk Hogan, and he's going to beat Hulk Hogan and the whole 9 yards. And so I walk up and I ask him if he's seen Vanna White, because I was looking for Vanna White. And he starts talking to me about he don't care about Vanna White, you don't do it. And all of a sudden he grabbed me and choked me. And it was really funny, because I wasn't expecting it. He wasn't supposed to do that, but it turned out to be one of the funny things in that whole WrestleMania thing. And it's on their website and everything else. It's funny. But he was such a giant, that guy was. He was like almost 8 feet tall, 7'7", whatever he was, weighed 560 pounds. Just a huge, huge guy. And the Wrestling Federation at that time, he was going to, he's getting kind of old, and he and Hulk Hogan wrestled for the championship, and Hulk, won and beat him. And then WrestleMania 4 was Randy Savage. These guys are unbelievable athletes. No matter what you think about wrestling, they're unbelievable athletes. Huge, strong, and last winter, I wound up being inducted into the World Wrestling Hall of Fame. And when I went out on stage, Dick Ebersol introduced me. He was my guy to introduce me. And before I went out there, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. Just like we're talking here today, just shooting the breeze. And Vince McMahon asked me what I was going to talk about, and I said, I don't really know. So before I went out, they inducted a Japanese wrestler. His name was Aoki, I believe. And he talked 99% Japanese, and they were showing it on the screen what he was talking about. I thought, man, here's my out. You know, I'm going to go out there and say, I can't believe this guy used all my stuff. and it worked. You know, it worked. You know, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said that. How do you know that? You know, so it worked good. But that was one of the. I don't know if a lot of people. No, you couldn't know this. I got inducted into the Sausage Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. Mark knows. One of our big sponsors in Milwaukee. I've been promoting sausage for a long time. So yeah, I got inducted into that. And I walked on stage wearing a casing, sausage casing. Looking tight too, looking real good. But yeah, no, I'm, you know what? I like to have a lot of fun. I have a good time no matter what I do. And I'm thankful that, you know, I had a couple of health problems last year that, you know, I encourage people to go get checked out. I had, you know, something that you're never aware of, because if you're a workout kind of a guy and you're doing your health stuff and, you know, you go for a checkup and somebody tells you something that's a little bit shocking, wow. And then when you have to do it twice and then 3 times, you know, you start wondering how long you got to go. But, you know, I did a good job, great job, and I'm back, feeling really good and working a full schedule. No, I'm doing great. I'm doing good. So.
Were you a bit like me? For 40 years, I got up every morning, well, nearly every morning, and said, I'm going to work, and I love what I do. I just absolutely love it. It's just such a wonderful break to be able to do that for a living.
You bet. Yeah, I'm a swimmer, and I developed a leaky valve, a valve that wouldn't shut on my aorta, and the doctors encouraged me to keep swimming, and they said eventually it's going to have to be taken care of, which they did. Did that, got a staph infection later on that ate a hole in one of the valves that they put in, so they had to go in and do it over again. But again, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. Not a thing. I mean, either you do that or you take a dirt bath. You know, one of the two. I mean,
what are you most proud of? I would think the Ford Frick Award would be.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame was nice. I mean, that really is. I mean, I still think I should have went in as a player. But that, you know, it lets you know that people recognize you for something other than being a player or being funny, that you're pretty good at what you do, as far as a broadcaster goes. It's really funny, when they told me that I was going to do this thing, you only have so many minutes to talk anyway when you're up there. So they asked me, the Hall of Fame people said, we want you to do what you do. You know, I said, well, how long do you have for me? He said, 6 minutes. I said, I can't do it in 6 minutes. I can't do that. They said, well, how long do you need? I said, give me 12, 13 minutes. I can be. Well, when I did it, I don't know, I talked for like 20. And I mean, I did just what I'm doing here, you know. And I mean, President Bush was sitting down in front of me, and I was breaking his chops and just telling all these stories that made me sound really good when I wasn't. You know, just doing the same thing. I mean, if I'd talk about ordering bats from Louisville Slugger, and they'd come back with a handle at each end. Or if I wanted flame-treated bats, they'd send a box of ashes. Or, you know, the tremendous amounts of money that sporting goods companies would pay me not to be seen with their equipment. All of those things, you know, when I'm working and, you know, doing my thing, that's what I talk about. I mean, it's last year Mark and I were talking on the ride over here today, and I'm thankful to him too for coming along with me here today and and being here. Last year we had the dedication ceremony for a statue for Bud Selig. Was that last year, last summer?
It was last
year
summer.
before? Yeah.
No, last summer.
So.
I know, well, summer,
yeah.
Summer of 2010.
Right. So we're having this dedication ceremony at the ballpark, and I'm emceeing, and Mark is up there going to introduce Buddy, and talks about Bud and his education and ownership. And
I believe I referred to him as the commissioner.
The commissioner, yeah.
Bob refers to him as Buddy.
I call him Al, Buddy. He, when he got, Mark introduced him, he mentioned Buddy had a bachelor's degree in whatever it was. History. So when I got back up there, and it's stuff, like I said before, weird things come to my mind. I don't know why they do, but they do. And I got back up there to continue on with the show, and I turned around and I told Mark that I had 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 divorces. So that put me one up on Buddy, So, but no, I mean, it's the whole scenario there with. He's one of the great friends that I have. He really is, and a great owner, and I mean, a great guy for the city of Milwaukee. And I'm not blowing any smoke at him. I feel this, and everybody in Milwaukee does too. He's one of the best people that I've been around. I mean, charitable, whatever you need. When we first talked about this, coming out here early in the season, I don't know, May or June, whenever it was.
Early summer.
He said, I want to go with you. I said, God, that'd be great. So, I mean, this morning he flew over from LA and jumped on with him in Phoenix, and we flew here today, and we're going back tonight. But he's one of the best. He really is. A great family guy, and when it's not hard to be good when you hang around with people like Mark. Really, I'm not blowing any smoke at him. I've told him this many times. I want to be like him someday. I really do. No, I mean that. I do. Mark, we were chatting about this on the airplane on the way over here. We just bought a team in Milwaukee. Myself, Robin Yount, a few of our other players, bought a minor league team. It's going to be an independent team. They're called the Lakeshore Chinooks, and start playing next season. And as I became an owner, I told somebody the other day, I said, the first thing I did, I got a charter airplane. It's an ultralight. It only carries myself. I can't take anybody with me, but I can't wait to ride that baby around.
Well, we have to close this part of the entertainment today. So I want to thank Dave Weber from WOWT in Omaha for helping me out. It's been great to have you here on campus with us.
Thank you.
Especially. And I want to thank Mark for getting Bob here, for wrangling him in, for keeping track of him, for being a great owner of the Brewers. And I especially want to thank Bob Uecker for being here for the Carson Lecture. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I did want to let you know, though, that we have a rather special recognition for you. And we hope that you will accept this with great pride. Excuse me just a second, I have to get it. This proclamation states, "The great Navy of the state of Nebraska, know ye that reposing special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and abilities of Bob Uecker, and knowing you to be a good person and a loyal friend and counselor, I have nominated and do appoint you an admiral in the great Navy of the state of Nebraska."
You are, therefore, called to diligently discharge the duties of Admiral by doing and performing all manner of things hereto belonging. And I do strictly charge and require all officers, seamen, tadpoles, and goldfish, under your command to be obedient to your orders as Admiral, and this commission to continue in force during the period of your good behavior and at the pleasure of the Chief Admiral of the Great Navy of the State of Nebraska, given under my hand this 4th day of November 2011, signed and sealed by Governor Dave Heineman, State of Nebraska.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, baby. Thank you.
We have one more special item of business to take care of, and at this point I'd like to ask you just to be patient and to welcome Chancellor Harvey Perlman to the stage.
Good to meet you. Thank you.
This is a big day for the Nebraska Navy.
I guess so.
The governor just gave 5 of them to actual admirals in the U.S. Navy about a half hour ago, so you're in good company. But thank you, Paul. In November of 2004, I stood on this very stage to help announce a very special gift from a very special alumnus of the University of Nebraska, Mr. Johnny Carson. At that time, the Department of Theater and Performing Arts was renamed the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film. This historic gem of our campus, the Temple Building, was renovated and expanded, and a special endowment was created to give students wonderful new opportunities in theater, film, and broadcasting. Little did we know back then that just how transformative Mr. Carson's gift would be. UNL's theater program dates back more than 100 years and has a strong tradition of training actors, designers, playwrights, and directors. In 1999, we created a film and new media program within the department to develop the next generation of filmmakers, screenwriters, directors, and special effects artists. Johnny Carson's generous gift to the university that gave him a foundation in speech and radio right here in the basement of the Temple Building has taken the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Art and Film to a whole new level of excellence in just a short 7 years. Recent accomplishments of our students include earning national fellowships from the Kennedy Center's American College Theater Festival and landing prestigious internships in both theater and film. Our Carson School faculty include 2 Emmy Award winners and an Oscar-nominated production designer. One of the unique projects funded by the Carson Endowment has been the creation of the Carson Film Series, which pairs professional filmmakers with our students and faculty to create a short film. The project literally involves the entire Carson School, its 125 students, as well as the Department of Art and Art History, the School of Music, and the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. The Carson School recently completed the first film in the series and has begun pre-production on the second film in this series. No other school in the country is doing anything like that. This summer, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln officially became a member of the Big Ten Conference and the Committee on Institutional Cooperation. I can tell you that the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film and its resources through the Carson Endowment are the envy of our Big Ten counterparts. Today, we celebrate the next chapter in this story. And to tell us that chapter, I'd like to introduce Terry Fairfield, Vice Chairman of the University of Nebraska Foundation. Terry?
Thank you, Chancellor Perlman. Johnny Carson enjoyed a long and loyal relationship with the University of Nebraska, starting with his undergraduate days and culminating with the naming of the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film. We have always enjoyed claiming Johnny as one of ours, and it's been even more exciting when he claims us as his by naming the university the place of his largest and most consistent philanthropy. Over the years, we have enjoyed many memorable moments with Johnny. Certainly one of the most exciting was the Kennedy Honors Program in Washington, D.C. in 1994. The university was asked to participate in the celebration, and as you will tell from this film clip, Johnny was surprised and delighted.
This has been a pretty good year for the state of Nebraska. The University of Nebraska Cornhuskers are the nation's top-ranked football team, and one of her sons was named to receive the Kennedy Center honor. Johnny Carson has been, very quietly, revealing it here tonight, very generous to the university over the years. And a few of the students just wanted to come here tonight and say, thank you, Johnny.
As wonderful as that moment was, nothing can compare to the October day in 2004 when I received a call from Johnny that forever changed the theater program at this university. It was an exciting call, an exciting day, and I looked forward to sharing Johnny's message to everyone, as you could tell from this clip. As all of you know, Johnny Carson came from Norfolk, Nebraska, and attended the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. While here, he very quickly became known as the entertainer on campus as he studied theater arts, comedy, and radio. In fact, his very first radio broadcast was right here from the Temple building. Throughout his life, he has commented often on the value of his education here and its importance in his success. And he has expressed that appreciation in many ways. Initially in 1977, when the foundation conducted its very first capital campaign, Johnny Carson endowed a scholarship fund. To this date, over 179 scholarship grants have been awarded from that fund. Again, in 1987, he and his wife Alex and brother Dick and sister Kit and their spouses attended a football game, and we then toured the then under construction Lied Center Performing Arts. That was Johnny's second major gift, and for that gift, the Black Box Theater was named in his honor. Our recent conversations have focused on a third project, and I'm delighted to share with you this morning that Johnny Carson has made a gift commitment of $5.3 million to the Hixson-Lied College of Fine and Performing Arts. This gift will be used to expand and renovate the Temple building and to create a $1 million endowment for the theater. Following Johnny's death, just a few months later from that event, the university received an additional $5 million from his estate. Its purpose was to endow the program of theater, of film, and of broadcasting, all of Johnny's interest. And as Chancellor Perlman mentioned earlier, it truly transformed the program. Today, we are especially pleased to have members of the John W. Carson Foundation with us. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Jeff Satsing, who is Johnny's nephew and president of Carson Production, and also Larry Witzer, who is Johnny's longtime friend and an advisor. A third member, Alan Alexander, was not able to be with us. Jeff and Larry are here to share another historic moment. Today, I'm delighted to announce the John W. Carson Foundation has made a gift of $1 million to create endowed scholarships for students enrolled in the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film, continuing Johnny's commitment to students and loyalty to the university. I'll ask him to stand again when we get the house lights on. Jeff and Larry, you weren't able to be with us when we celebrated the tribute to Johnny in Washington, D.C. at Kennedy Honors, or when we announced the extraordinary gift that resulted in the naming of the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film. But we're delighted you're here today to share with us this great announcement of $1 million to support endowments, and we appreciate the trustees' votes to generate that support for us. It gives us an opportunity, though, to give you a taste, a bit of Husker magic, if you will. Johnny certainly always felt it, and he always believed there is no place like Nebraska. Both.
Jeff, thank you, Larry, for your continued support. These scholarships mean so much to us. I'd like to thank the UNL Marching Band. Woo! And all of you for coming today. For the public who are here today, we are having a reception out in the lobby right now. If you'd like to take a few moments to head on out there, you can have a chance to thank Jeff and Larry for their kindness to the school. For the students and the faculty and the staff of the Johnny Carson School, I ask that you all remain here in the room. We'd like to get an opportunity to take a picture. It's rare that we get a chance to take a picture of all the students, and this is an opportunity to get us with the marching band and everyone else. So please, the public, please enjoy the reception. We'll be out in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for coming.